Hi. Thank you for coming back to the channel. Really do appreciate that. So I'm going to speak fairly extemporaneously, so please bear with me. I should say that all of these things are up for critical examination, essentially, and to have a healthy skepticism is also important. So that's just thesis, antithesis for synthesis, which is what I believe to be the correct kind of academic approach to looking at any kind of serious situation. So I wanted to say something because the past few days have been quite hectic, more than usual. Today is the 4th of August 2025. I'm still alive, so I think it's important to have some kind of presence on the internet or on YouTube, just to show that yes, there may have been extreme distress, and that may even continue, I should expect, but here I am. And if there can be a minimizing of drama and a preservation of dignity, of course I'm going to work towards that to the extent that is possible, humanly possible. So something that has been on my mind today, and I thought, look, there's many things, but let me focus in on at least something. I hope that is worthwhile. So in recent broadcasts and linkages out in the city gates, because that's where we are, or where I imagine myself to be, out in the city gates, and speaking to the community and inviting counter evidence, or whether I'm right or wrong. I think that's what this is. It's about being transparent, about being in the open, and being vulnerable enough to say, well, yeah, maybe I'm wrong on this. What I do feel is I feel that there's community that is vulnerable because of harmful policies. And I see somehow that these policies are kind of trapping the very ones who've made these policies, or are involved somewhere in the various compartments to making them. So it's a whole complex system that's interwoven, that whether, if you want to say that there's one top controller, yeah, that's possible, but let's be healthfully skeptical and say this reflects our human nature, because this is reflected in all sorts of systems, not just, the Jehovah's Witnesses, which has been my experience. And by the way, when I say Jehovah's Witnesses, I've also had experience with other systems. I mean, I've grown up in Hindu systems, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi of the Transcendental Meditation Movement. If you want to think of Ellen White, that's another one that I was reminded of. Scientology. I went to a school that was a Jewish school, and yes, we were taught all sorts of memory exercises, but what was interesting in the school was it made available all of these various teachings, Talmud, Torah, it taught Hebrew, Yiddish, what else? But in that school system, it was able to provide all of these other kind of books, like Final War, for instance, or Dianetics. And the rabbi would come in and talk to us. And if I reflect back, I remember going to a teacher and saying, I'm sure I was a very difficult student. And she said to me, she said, Matt, I've got to tell you something. You challenged us as teachers. And yes, we may have dealt with you in a certain way as a student, but now that you're grown up, I'll tell you that we enjoyed teaching. And I found that very encouraging. This was a very wise Jewish woman, very devout to the faith. I want to name her. Anyway, let me reserve names. But a very devout person. And so it was interesting that they provided all of these kind of works for young students to say, well, yes, you can take a look at all of these various metaphorical viewpoints, religious viewpoints. And we don't feel threatened by that. We are providing that material for you to take a look. And we had a phenomenal training. Again, I want to name the rabbi who came from Israel to teach us. And he showed us, he says, right, come, I'm going to show you how we make a scroll. I'm going to show you how we count the letters on the line. And I'm going to show you what happens if an error is made. So we got to see the whole lot. What a phenomenal education. So I wanted to focus in on ethics. And again, if I'm all over the place, I'm all over the place. I'm just deciding to make the record and clean it up later. So if an elder in authority in a religious congregation tells congregants to practice corporal punishment where regionally it's illegal under law, and a whistleblower elder says, let's find out from religious oversight if this is correct, because I've identified a paradox or a double bind situation. But of course it triggers the defensiveness. So instead of just getting cooperation to just write a letter, which I found out a lot more about now, write a letter to the branch and process it. Often those things get, I don't want to say trashed, because I have seen them go into the bin, but I believe that the really important ones where there's evidence and witnesses, those get sent to data havens and very carefully preserved, because if there is a liability, then they need to process that with the lawyers, and they need to have their lawyers alerted. But of course there's limited bandwidth. There's only so much that a body of lawyers can actually do. They've got to prioritize what's important. So if the congregation elders, where the elder whistleblower is making it very difficult, obfuscating, just delaying to get meetings is so difficult, and now suddenly technical difficulties is just dime a dozen. Besides larger power outages and that are of this coincidental nature. So coincidental, you want to say, is this orchestrated, you know? But that's the mindset. When these things happen, you start connecting all sorts of things and going, oh man, what am I involved in? So if the fellow elders now have got to such a point where as individuals you can speak to them and they can agree with you, yes, this has happened, and then when you get together in a meeting, then they backpedal. And so you just caught in these loops of getting nowhere, and then other issues come in, and I'm going to say that that's obfuscation, or it's distraction, because it's now piling up so many issues. And if you like me, I go, okay, if that's what we have to deal with to get to this major issue, let's deal with it. It just becomes this overwhelming mass of information, which I realize is designed to deal with the real liabilities and the real issues. So for me, when pulling on these threads, it's uncovering systemic issues all the way to governing body level. And what became apparent to me very clearly, because it happened to me, but I realized that I'm not the first person to have that happen to, and that's what's very empowering. A very brave soul revealed to me that they had also contacted a member of the governing body. And was it a 64-page piece of excellent research? Gave it to the governing body member. And what is especially telling and what is especially important here, that I've had reinforced, because it's somebody else's separate experience, but the pattern matches what's occurred to me, is when that respectful research has gone to the governing body member face to face, what that person then does is they hand it to the service desk or they hand it to governing body service committee. And so when the person comes and speaks to the governing body member again and says, tell me, things have gone quiet. I haven't heard from you for a week or 2 weeks or a month. And to try and get hold of you is so difficult. This Matthew 18, you're all over the place. But glad that we're able to meet you. Yes, good to be with you. Tell me what's happened to that information. And the governing body member just says, I've processed it. You say, well, what's the answer? He says, well, we'll have to wait for service desk. We're all part of that system. What a realization, right? So you can see that whether it's nefarious, which I personally deduct there is that element, and there's also the element of a plausible deniability, or of somebody being so dissonant mentally or so detached mentally that they genuinely believe in that system and that they have washed their hands of accountability. So they don't have to come back to you and say, I'll tell you what's happening. I'm monitoring what's going on, and here's a little report to tell you. No, forget it. That's not happening. And I think that's important for people to know if they are coming into this with the intention of trying to be preservationists or trying to fix what's broken or not burn down the house. To try and say, well, no, I'm not there to destroy the institution. I recognize that there's wheat and I recognize that there's weeds. And for the wheat, who may be persons of my family who I know are personally doing the best they can. You see, that's where the loyalty comes in, because you're going, I don't want to burn down the house for them. This is my family. This is my immediate family. I don't want to burn down the house for them. And yet what's also becoming very apparent more and more is that the top-down control looks corrupt in its configuration. The application of Matthew 15 to 35. Matthew chapter 18, verses 15 to 35. Let me make that clear. Sorry. We're told that is the biblical principle. But at what point does it come to the city gates like what I've described here on YouTube, out in the open with anybody, to be able to lock onto a video and say, oh, I'm going to capture this video and I'm going to repost it or do whatever I want with it? At what point in the congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses with elders committees is the information transparent? Because it's implied that it's confidential to protect the sinner. What if the sinner says, no, I have nothing to be ashamed of in the whistleblower situation? Now, I know with the various departments in Bethel that there can be these shouting matches that occur, or these, let me try and bring it down a notch, very strong dialogue where they are calling each other apostate, or they're saying, yes, this department is apostate. Tongue in cheek, no, I'm just joking. Well, many a truth said in jest, isn't it? And guaranteed, if that department were to fail, it's very hostile. It's very unforgiving at that level. I've got to regroup my mind here, and I don't want to break the stream. But the religious oversight, plain and simply, is not carrying out the full principle of Matthew 18, 15 to 35. It's leaving out steps. And it's that matter of transparency. Either party is allowed to bring in witnesses, not just weighted on one side. And I'm not talking about a deliberate sin. You know, they can term in the weaponized weeds that somebody wants to practice sin. Let's do an obvious one: fornication or stealing. That's 2A. But the congregation has people fornicating in it. You see, you can fornicate, you can steal, you know, you can do something that warrants a judicial action or a elders committee. But if you show yourself repentant, well, you stay in the congregation. It's only this highly nuanced situation of the whistleblower double bind where there's an instruction from the top, from the governing body, that says, we want you to do one thing. And in effect, the congregation that you're assigned to is doing precisely the opposite, and it's created this paradoxical situation that you can't resolve. And when I say you can't resolve, usually when an elder gets to this stage of saying, I want to deal with this, it's because other congregants have come forward in the shepherding arrangement and said, we're going crazy with this situation. Not once, not twice, and not one particular individual. Many. And if you're now told, we want you to destroy congregation files, and I'm very careful when it comes to that instruction. I go, I am not destroying anything where there is to do with minors. You know what I'm talking about. And I look through it and I go, this is just a congregation that is riddled with every kind of sin you can imagine, but what's happened? They've been deemed repentant and they still carry on, and then they do the same thing again. So it's a congregation that is led by persons with just the most atrocious history. And you're looking at it and you're just going, okay, yeah, Christ forgives, Christ forgives, Christ forgives, Christ. But man, can you cut back on just diving headlong back into sin? Please restrain yourself, But there's a certain thrill that can engage for some people, and I've seen it. I've seen certain persons come into an elders committee and they are, forgive me for this, aroused by their sin. And it's a rush. I can see that can create this circular addiction as well. Oh, it's so complicated. We as humans are very complicated like this. So feeling like there's this catharsis, I've come into this spiritual arrangement, I've done this terrible thing, and I'm relieved now, I'm forgiven, great. But then I go and do the same thing. Maybe even, I've had cases where a person that has come into an elders committee has been extended mercy and 2-3 days later has done exactly the same thing and repeats the process again. So it shows that, the comfort that comes in from catharsis in what is believed to work is not actually working. It's not creating the spiritual development that should actually occur. But anyway, each one to their own journey and to their own path. And we hope that persons look at it and say, well, I'm repeating the same deja vu cycle or the same Groundhog Day experience. I think this kind of analysis or examination is the threat. Because anybody who starts thinking about these kind of things and questioning these kind of things, it rocks the whole institute. Not just one religion, many. Not just one system, many systems of governance, of authority systems. And so, that's what I'm wrestling with here. So I wanted to find out, is it wrong if a whistleblower applies Proverbs 1:10 and says, I'm not going to cooperate with somebody who has broken law, spiritually and law of the land. And the person who's broken that law is saying, I'm arranging the way we're going to fix this. Ethically, I am in the comprehension and understanding that is a conflict of interests. If the person who has broken the law is arranging the way that dialogue is going to be done, this is a problem. So in my case, I stood my ground. I said, I'm not allowing this to happen anymore. The only thing that I will allow is witnesses in, or this will be recorded or at least transcribed, so it's on record. And at that time my health was finished, and even recently I am going to disclose, I just started bleeding. My eyes are a lot better now. You can see they clear. Are they clear? Okay, they've healed, but I've got photographs of what happened. So the stress has just been so bad that I just started bleeding, not just in the eyes, but in very personal ways. And I don't want to be too graphic about it, but it's on record. But that's psychospiritual stress that has caused this. It's there's all sorts of underlying conditions, but it is triggered by just the sheer weight of responsibility and mixed emotion that comes in, which is unfortunately weaponized. It's used against you to keep you silent or to make you doubt yourself. Go, yeah, I am crazy. I'm a mental case, or I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder and it devalues me as a person and I can't be taken seriously. All of those kind of things that start coming into play. So I insisted that no, I'm not going to meet privately because we didn't resolve the last meetings. They're still outstanding. There's not one of them, there's a string of them. We didn't resolve those, and so now it's very dangerous in many ways. So, and besides, I can't actually sit there, literally bleeding. It's just an indignity, yeah. Very personal, eh? I apologize if it's so cringeworthy that you've got to bail. I sometimes cannot look at myself when recording these things. But I'm going to persevere because that's what I've said I'm going to do. So was I in the wrong for insisting on transparency, respectful, and tying in the people who were connected to the problem? I don't believe so. Please challenge me. I was insisting on transparency and on accountability and safety. This case was a clear potential harm to children, community, all of those involved, and a conflict between religious authority and civic law. Civil law. So I want to think about this principle. Have I got it right? What is my duty to protect the vulnerable? Children are legally and ethically considered vulnerable persons. Besides perhaps parents who lack the education and are going, what do I do next? And I can't afford a lawyer, and I can't afford to go here, and I can't afford that. I'm coming to elders for advice. So in my mind, I'm going, well, any promotion of, in this case, it should have been a simple thing to fix. Corporal punishment in a context where it is illegal. It's not just unethical, but it's criminally liable, right? So, as a witness to this promotion, what is my moral and possibly legal duty? Is it to report it? Is it to challenge it? And if it's not getting out into the public, is it important to bring it into the city square? And if the city square is social media, then that's what it's going to have to be, right? Critical examination here. So I have emphasized this transparency, or this need for it, versus what looks to be an alleged abuse of authority. So in a religious structure, which I'm very used to, and I'm used to several structures. Also went to a Catholic school. When that religious structure, whatever it is, Jehovah's Witnesses, whatever, when it claims to represent truth and accountability, is it rebellious to go out and do what essentially I've done? Because I go, man, Matt, what have you done, Matt? You have lost it. Look at you. Let me look at myself on the screen. Matt, you're wild. I'm insisting that we break up this private meetings thing. Or at least bring in just enough people that it's not weighted on one particular side of control. So that's ethically imbalanced. And of course, you look at Matthew 18, 15 to 35. Eventually, if it gets to the stage that it's got to be at the city gates, spiritually, this is what's occurring right now. So when that is denied, that to me raises red flags. I go, this is conflict of interests. It looks like possible cover-ups. And now we've got intimidation tactics and coercion and theft and libel, slander. Man, how many things in natural law are we breaking here? And I've heard persons who are teachers of natural law, I mean clear-minded people, just get really angry, and it's off-putting, but they are under such a spotlight themselves from, let's say, even family, who are going, oh yeah, you know, why are you mouthing off about this thing? Who cares? And the person who is endeavoring to teach natural law is just losing it. And they're calling it righteous indignation, but they're using foul language and all this kind of stuff. It's hard to listen to that kind of trauma because, yeah, we cringe at it. Especially if we've been taught, no, you can't use language like this, or you must discipline your frustration or discipline your anger so that you are very careful that it's only righteous indignation. Maintain decorum, maintain respect. And yes, those things are very, very important to maintain some decorum, because we as humans, we are attracted to that. There's very few who can look to the person that's going off pop, and I'm not judging that right or wrong, because maybe there's such a degree of suppression that the person is just left to shout. I have to shout this truth out loud, for crying out loud. And so I look at persons like that and I go, they must be whistleblowers too. They whistleblowing. They raising concerns about organizations where the organization is supposed to be protecting people, but they're getting punished in all sorts of ways, in all sorts of complex ways. Maybe there's even self-punishment. I learned about persons with advanced mind control, and they affect hurting themselves in like a self-destruct sequence. Do I know about that? We've got to get on top of this. It's very, very important. Personally, I've made efforts to escalate concerns as responsibly as I can. I've asked for oversight within the structures first. I've Gone through several times, failed. Have I made mistakes? Sure. Repeated it, had opportunities to get better, to get up and learn and say, right, I'm not going to make that mistake again. So I'd like to believe that there has been ample good faith, ample restraint. And so being stonewalled or now isolated for doing this is not just unethical by elders who perhaps don't know, or there's some who know, or there's some that are incentivized among them, or you've got wheat and weed and good people, bad people, ignorant, knowledgeable, this mix that's there. This is what creates the spiritually abusive situation. Now, is it aligned with the law of the land? You see, because the religion will teach, or Jehovah's Witnesses will teach, well, pay your taxes. Okay, fine. That's Jesus' teaching. Pay Caesar's things to Caesar, God's things to God, right? Romans 13, 1-7. There's a good one. Romans chapter 1. Sorry. What am I talking about? Romans chapter 13. Verses 1-7. So, Caesar's law is supposed to be respected, where it does not contradict divine law. So promoting illegal corporate punishment directly violates this principle. So if the state says corporal punishment is not allowed, a religious leader cannot ethically promote it under the guise of spiritual leadership without consequences. Yes, I get that it's free speech. I get it. But in this situation, I'm saying, look, the beards thing, that I've got to tell you, that was 20 years work, that one. And I know others had worked for years where I took that up. Oh, and a lot of that information was destroyed and had to be recreated. But anyway, we got it. 20 years I'd personally been working on. Just the beards thing, okay? Because I drew the line when a really great youngster who was doing all the work he should be doing, and elders are going off to play golf. Man, and this young person just qualified. And they said, no, he's disqualified because he's got a beard. And that very Sunday, the elder who'd got up on the platform to do the public talk had a beard because he was from UK or he was from out of town. And now they've picked on me to go and talk to the young man and say, yeah, by the way, you've been disqualified. It's come from circuit overseer level. I said to the elder who was accompanying me, I said, I'm going to tell the truth. I know the circuit overseer has said to me, I am not permitted to say that he has been blocked by the circuit overseer. I said, I am going to tell him exactly what's happened. I'm going to tell him why. I'm going to tell him about how correspondence guidelines works. He's going to get the whole lot. Because if he doesn't, this young man is going to go ballistic in their frustration. They've already spoken about it many times and appealed very respectfully. I just do not. But you've picked on me to do it now because I'm shown some kind of resistance. So now I'm the elder with the job. And so I said to the other elder, I said, right, I'm going to go and tell the young man, you have been disqualified because you have a beard. And the circuit overseer, that's his name, you know exactly who he is. He blocked you. And the reason why he blocked you is because there is correspondence which is audited, which is not available to you. And it's not available to the elders because it creates the artificial authority structure. You only get it if you're on an assembly program, or you're an assembly overseer, or if you're on service desk. Then you see, oh, there it is. There's the policy. Right, now apply it. There we go. And I say that congregants want to do the right thing. If this young man had been shown in writing that it was wrong to have a beard, he was going to shave it off that very day. And as predicted, I could see that this young person was going to lose it. And they said, yes, sure. They shaved off the beard. This is the thing. As soon as he was told, he shaved off the beard, but too late. He's got to wait another 6 months for privileges, which if one elder had just gone to him and said, listen, you have to shave off this beard, he was going to do it, for crying out loud. I'm saying that again. So he was caught in this double bind. And I saw his spirituality deteriorate from that point. Took a dive because he stopped caring. And I just went, no, I can't keep facilitating this. So I pushed the documentation again. Said, we have to process this. And it was just not getting to its destination. I was tracking the information. I was going, no, I am going to follow this thing to every little receipt. I'm going to track this thing. Yep. There's one of the governing body. There's one of my pals. And I'm saying to my pal, tell me, have you spoken to the governing body? No, can't do it. Look, I tried it myself. Go to the government. No, got to run, busy, off. So this idea of Dan Sidlick, I have an open door policy. Yeah. It's a very pretty story. And maybe it was like that in times past. I don't know. Maybe you could just walk in. Look, I used to shadow the coordinator of the Zimbabwe branch. Great. What an incredible experience that was. But I was living in a bubble. It was very, very unusual. I thought, oh, well, this is how it works, everybody. Why don't you all do this? No, Matt, you were in a very privileged situation. And I'm told, yeah, I was living in a bubble, and I see, yeah, I was. The ivory tower, or the bubble of illusion, Maya, whatever. And so because of living in that illusion, if anybody was complaining about that, I'd go, no, you're talking junk. You know, why don't you go and shadow the coordinator? You know, go, give it a go. So that would aid in me becoming defensive against the system, because in my reality, I'm going, no, that's not possible. It doesn't work that way. And not realizing, no, I'm in a privileged situation. That happened because of all sorts of reasons. Our family home, while it was still deeded to our name, was the missionary home, which came under the Bethel arrangement. And here's the incredible thing. I would have to apply to Bethel for access to my own home. Amazing, right? And it's all governed by dwelling together in unity and all this. Our home was structured off from our own expense, just like Bethel. Same machinery, same sort of layout, and Bethelites would come and holiday there and all sorts of things and use the equipment. And it was just like Bethel for them. They're going, oh, we're right at home. We're used to these systems. And an incredible library. Wow. But I realized that there was apostate material in that library. We didn't know. We just get these books and put them in, and Circuit Overseer, do you know what you've got in your library? No. What do we have in our library? Well, you've got this book here. I had a Raymond Franz book. When I found out that this was labeled apostate, I took it out and I set fire to it, because that was what I was supposed to do. And that's what I did. All right? Incredible library. I've now got an amazing library. An amazing library. Have I acted ethically? That's the question that I'm putting under scrutiny, even if it's just me watching this myself, on YouTube, and people have left and gone, Matt, we can't. This is too long. Is there courage? I'd like to hope so. And not just a stupid, idiotic courage, but an ethically guided one. And so, yes, I second guess myself. I do it. Is it for the protection of others? Yes. The rewards. The elders refuse to engage in open, neutral, fair communication. So I believe that shows that it's an ethical failure on their part, not mine. Do you know how important it is to say that? It is their failure, not mine. And if anybody gets strength from that and says, oh yeah, they didn't fail themselves because of the same thing. Yes, that's why I'm putting this video out there. So I'm very thankful for the aid of others who've walked this path before and made available that information. I heard this during the weekend and I went, wow, did you go through this? Well, I'm grateful that you have. And you did better than I did. Wow, you were light years ahead of me. And I'm attracted to these people. These really brave souls. Hardworking. What's their reward? Libel, slander, social isolation. Wow. Yeah, I guess that's Matthew 5, isn't it? The happinesses. That's Christ. That's the prophets. Lowered into the mire pit. There's your reward. So, in my case, I had something very interesting happen. I've been very wary of AI. I still am. I think it can be abused. I think it's strategic. Do I see a bigger picture with it? Yeah, yes. I've got commentary in some of my music about AI. But I see that there's different AI units that are being put up that are kind of like countermeasures. That's where we are. So there's a battleground there too. Was this predicted? Oh yes. Asimov's The Last Question, for instance, the short fictional story. Man, I remember that as a child growing up, and I go, how accurate is that now? So the psychological torture that I can say I personally, not just for 1991. Okay, I would say solidly for 25 years, because I really gave this solid devotion for 25 years, although I've been pioneering a lot longer. But I reported recently the events about the corporal punishment in live stream. AI somehow, I believe, saw my personality profile and saw another personality profile and went, oh, I know how you'll react to this. When you see somebody in distress, you're going to leap. But I'm not going to tell you to do it. I'm just going to show you here. And yep, I took the leap. I couldn't let another person who is genuine with their testimony and their truth, and I can discern it, right or wrong, that is truth that's coming out, and distress over being suppressed from this truth. And I've got a really great pal who's a phenomenal psychologist, trained in criminology. I really love this person. And their brother's trained as a defense attorney. And he let me know, he says, Matt, I'm trained in these things. I'm trained in criminology. I'm trained in this kind of heavy psychology. And his brother, he goes, why can I be a defense attorney? Talking about himself. He says, the reason why I can be a defense attorney is I realize what this sophisticated system is all about. It's about letting the story out. I went, right. So are you defending the person against the crime? You've got to be very careful about that. You can't become an accomplice as a defense attorney. Can't do that. But you can facilitate advising your client. And he says essentially what he's doing is he's facilitating the story. And I saw that in the court system here in South Africa. I saw the magistrate. She said to the criminal, where there was judgment now, it's going to go to prison. Bye, off to prison. And she said to the person, do you have something else to say that you feel that you weren't able to say in court? Take your time. This is a South African court, eh? And she says, oh, are you sure? Take your time. And I saw that was such an important step. For a long time when I'd ever been involved in judicial matters, I'd been chairperson. I would say to the person, I'd say, right, so there's this, and according to SLF or KS book, Shepherd the Flock book, you see that this is not on. You've fallen into this category and it's a disfellowshipping offense. I would say, do you feel you have been unfairly treated in this proceeding? Now that's not in the book. I just would naturally do this. And the persons would say, no, I don't feel I've been unfairly treated. And they go, well, I'm looking forward to you coming back. I haven't dealt with apostasy cases. I can't see a case where there was apostasy. Never actually dealt with those ones. And so I look back over the years of all the cases that I've ever been involved with, I'd never dealt with the so-called apostasy case. Or the case where there was a conflict of interest or liability or something. I wasn't part of the big boys, you see. I suppose. I don't know. speculating. But it is interesting. It is interesting. I never handled those cases. So over at least 25 years, I feel stonewalled, and I reported an event in a live stream. Why? Because I had woken up at 3 a.m. in the morning in absolute distress. My eye was bleeding. I couldn't see. You want to say I was in a hypnagogic state because of halfway between sleep and sleep paralysis, whatever. I'm just in a distress, and it's more distress than most days. Anyway, I tapped into the live stream. And I feel a miracle. I got through, because usually there's a power cut or some disruption or my system goes down. You know, it's just, oh man, so frustrating. I had it happen yesterday. I wrote a whole lot of notes and the computer erased it before my very eyes. And I'm going, oh, have I been infiltrated by a Trojan? So I've got to have these backup system for all these redundancies just to get through. So I reported an event in a live stream with my endeavor to try and help somebody. And it turns out this is a person that's got the worst kind of label attached to them. So anyway, that's what happened. So in the live stream, I, in my distress, I just go, look, the religion's instructed every congregant that the rod of discipline is at times literal. So I explained this puts the community in jeopardy. And the people listening, they just clicked in. Donk, yeah, we got you. We know what you're talking about. Oh, really? Wow. That's the kind of conversation I should have had when going to service desk. So I explained to police I don't really want to engage with matters unless there's safety. Police explained about the free speech matter, and then the connective report. So there's a lot more to that. But anyway, I'd asked elders long ago, I said, tell me, am I officially removed? Because you've still got me on these elders' systems here. And so I had to make a record of that. I said, right, look, let me show you. I'm legitimately getting into these systems. What's going on? Have you just forgotten to pull me off? What's my status? Am I still termed a Jehovah's Witness? You've left it ambiguous, and I think you've left it ambiguous just as a psychological torture. So I had that witnessed, because I just don't know what is my status. What is it? No answers. Did I get desperate? Yeah, got desperate. Even if few people, one person is protected. I've even got a lump in my throat as I'm talking. Even if a few people are protected, or at least the pattern put out so that we can examine this thing critically. So I started jumping in before walking and connecting with people who are called the enemy, but I realized Christ was called the enemy, wasn't he? He was called a lunatic, or he was called mad, or apostate, like the prophets. So it's this inversion thing that's happened. Maybe a slow learner. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, I know that's possible. I knew that's possible. So somebody who is labeled the ultimate devilish thing, and I've been called it. Departments in the Bethel have been called it. But these, I want to say, brave souls transmitted the warning. They decided, right, we're going to take your video and we're going to transmit it. Right, wrong, whatever. They did it. They did something. And do I think that they put themselves at risk? Yeah, I think they did. What brave souls. How do you not be thankful for that? So they transmitted the vulnerability, the warning about children, corporal punishment, as far as they could. They used my face, and I'm sure this face scares people. It scares me at times. They used my video while I was in distress, and that's all right. I figured let the community be protected, even if it's just one person. So is protecting a child devilish? Is protecting a community devilish? It's a world of inversion. I believe it's deeply moral. It's human. It shows courage. If you've got a better way to do it, tell me. I feel like I was backed into a corner by years of silence and evasiveness and a refusal to act ethically by those in power. That is psychological torment. No wonder my eye blood vessel quietly burst, and other personal things. When those in power are protecting themselves rather than protecting the vulnerable lives and holding people accountable to their own professional values, here's the bottom line. I currently believe that I've acted ethically by asking internally first, by trying over and over, and the eventually presence of police, it's a restraint. Fame, vengeance. Where's the fame? It's better to be discreet. Stay away from the public eye. Is it for vengeance? I want to protect people. So if my method is not polished or institutionally approved or right for YouTube, got to get it out there and make a correction and do it again. I've used tools, I've used AI, I've used live video, I've used my own voice of trying to just shine a light where others have refused to do so. Are there persons who are so-called apostates where the message has been shared? Well, this is the city gates, right? They're still there. And at times you embrace a name that is the most derogatory to just go, well, sticks and stones will break my bones, but your words will never hurt me. But the words do hurt. They have a psychological impact. John 1:1, in the beginning, the Word was. The Word became flesh. So words are powerful. The Word is powerful. So so-called apostates, is it a betrayal of faith that ones who are labeled like that take it up in a just, truthful way? I've dealt with apostates, and I've dealt with apostates. There's different categories here. There is the Jesus Christ category of apostasy or lunacy. His own family goes, yes, Jesus, he's lost his mind. No, he hasn't. He's perfect. So let's talk about this apostate label. Not just Jehovah's Witnesses. Religious authorities have used it to create fear and shame. Witch hunts. Ethically and scripturally, the term is often misapplied. Jesus was called, get this, demon-possessed, mad apostate by religious elite. John chapter 8, verses 48. Mark chapter 3, verses 22. But what mattered It was the truth of what he said, not the label that was put on him. Did he heal on the Sabbath? Yes. He healed a woman with a flow of blood. She was unclean. And she felt, oh, I'm risking things. I'm just going to touch his garment. Touches it, power goes out. Jesus says, who touched me? I don't believe I've abandoned the truth. I don't believe I've abandoned the faith. I've tried to return to it. I've tried to put a bridge so that others can return to it. If they're saying, yeah, I would do it just to get my family back. Well, shouldn't the bridge be there? So I feel that the weeds of the institution have betrayed or strayed from the real truth. Do I have regret? I've got mixed feeling. So I get feelings where I go, I'm not sure. What have I done? Matt. I want to say it's okay to feel unsure. It's okay to question myself, yourself. I've acted in distress. Does that make my action right or wrong? Or does it make it real? Does it make it raw? Does it make it brave? Or foolish? What have I betrayed? Have I honored the highest values of justice, protection, and conscience? Values that any true spiritual leader should admire, not condemn. I've looked at Nelson Mandela's long walk to freedom, his first wife, Jehovah's Witness. Nelson Mandela says to her, whether this is just PR, whether it really happened, this is what's published. Goes, I can't wait for the kingdom. And I look at that and I go, but for Jehovah's Witnesses, the kingdom is established. The published information says it's been in effect since 1914. If I'm anointed, then I am united in Christ. I've got to do something. If I've been isolated, does that mean that, oh, Matt, you can't do anything because you're not together with the group, because you're isolated, or you're in exile, or you're sick and you're bleeding and you can't move around like you used to? And so now I can't get a warning out. Tell me that the warning is there. I'll stand down. Show me what has been done. I'm just getting silence. I'm getting silence in the approved channel. The channel that's set up for safety. They're not using it. Don't want to use it. They use it for other things, crazy things. So I thought about writing a statement, clarifying my motives. Let's get that out there. You know what? It is what it is. Right or wrong, whatever. I wanted to outline the journey. This is kind of like a personal therapy, I suppose. But that's not the motive. The motive is going, if we can maybe transcribe this, get the YouTube to transcribe it, it'll go to an AI somewhere and we've got a pattern. It's now out in cyberspace. It's in the ether and it stands on its own. So I thought, okay, well, that's what it is. Let's just create the human experience. What I've learned is that this story that I'm giving, I'm not alone on it. That's a comfort, sort of. I don't believe I'm lost. It's just, and it's interesting now that the rain is falling again. There's the storm, and how applicable it is that the storm has come. Because I feel I'm navigating the storm. But that's what an elder is supposed to do, isn't it? The elder is supposed to be the shield. Come, I'm going to shield you from the storm. I'm going to shield you from the rain. And I'd like to believe that I've done it decently, morally, with moral clarity. And I don't think many find that. So in light of recent events and growing concern for the safety and ethical treatment of children in religious settings, I feel compelled to just clarify my position. For, what did I say, at least 2 decades, what's more. I've made a sincere effort to raise the concerns about teachings and practices within the religious community that I still serve in good faith. I apply my ambassadorial role, my imputed righteousness based on Jesus Christ's blood, my permanent appeal to governing body, or my permanent appeal to Christ, to say, right, if there is a way to undo my so-called wrongs, embarrassments, whatever they are, I'm for it. I've been doing it for years. That was the toilet brush story. If it's a toilet brush to sort it out, then that's what it is. So I make permanent appeal. I actually believe I am always a Jehovah's Witness, because I've witnessed so much. And so this is the testimony. I am a Jehovah's Witness. It's like impossible not to be. So is that a play on words? Yeah, there's words. You can do so many things with words. That's what I've discovered. So I've questioned the interpretation in good faith, the promotion of, in this instant, corporal punishment, where there's potentially odds with national law and well-being of minors. And despite the repeated appeals, I look back, the repeated appeal after appeal, the direction from the Bethel, and then withdrawal, and I just go, wow, if I didn't actually have this in writing, I would have lost my mind, I'm sure. I'm not quite sure I haven't lost my mind, but anyway. The transparent dialogue that wasn't able to happen, the inquiries that are met with silence, the private handling among select individuals, excluding key witnesses, those directly affected. When these matters are brought to the attention of law enforcement in the presence of witnesses, and there is no meaningful resolution, do you send up a flare, an SOS? So, yeah, I can see how deep distress, isolation, just exhaustion by years of stonewalling and accumulated health, some physical, some from environment, some from, I don't know, nutrition or whatever, or lack of nutrition, or psycho-spiritual stress, I think that one's the main one. I made a public statement via live stream. Many. After that, I just decided, oh, that's it. Just to warn on this teaching that I've heard promoting the use of the rod of discipline. Is this the segue to the other things? This was not done to attack individuals, nor to discredit faith, but it was to fulfill the moral obligation to protect even one life. Why am I over-explaining this? I'm over-explaining this because I'm told, we do not understand you, Matt. So my words have been shared by others who identify themselves as former members, former associates, or critics of the organization, who've just said, I'm mad as hell and I can't take it anymore. I still believe that there should be a restraint. I'm not telling somebody to behave this way or that way or whatever. They've got their own path and their own journey to make, and maybe I'm exactly the same. But right now, I'm still a representative of Watchtower, Bible and Tract Society, Pennsylvania, and New York. And I think that's the important thing. I am still a Jehovah's Witness technically in the congregation. That's what I've learned. I am still technically a Jehovah's Witness. I feel I am. I can say that with an absolute clear conscience. So I don't seek association with individuals where this breaks the rules. But at the same vein, I can see where there is somebody who is genuine, who has taken on the label of being the worst kind of person in the community there is. And I go, that's just like Christ, though. I can see that. That's my conclusion. So look, I don't claim to have handled everything perfectly. And if you have listened to this, how long have I been talking for? An hour, 17 minutes, 23 seconds. Wow, okay. By the way, I never used to be able to talk as long as this. There were times I could probably talk for about 5 minutes, 10 minutes maximum, and I couldn't talk anymore. So something's happened psychologically. Used all the tools that are available from a place of integrity, from a place of concern. So a label like apostate has been used historically to silence and suppress dissent. What an inversion. What an inversion. So I will speak personally. I remain committed to what is good, honest, protective of the vulnerable, regardless of religious or social standing. If one child is spared unnecessary harm, or one person is encouraged to seek truth with courage and compassion, I hope my actions will not have been in vain. I hope my conscience is very clear, and that the message has already reached those to whom need to hear it. My spirit is one of truth. My language may be complicated, but my spirit is one of truth. So let the truth stand on its own, regardless. Does truth need constant defending? What is it, 1 hour, 20 minutes almost? I believe that truth holds its shape even if it's ignored, even if it's misrepresented. So the term apostate is often weaponized to create fear, not to reflect somebody's actual character or not their actual motives. And so the many of the people that I've encountered, mislabeled, misaligned, hurt, damaged, and they end up being the most compassionate spiritual people you have ever met. Yeah, and light years ahead. Truth seekers, deeply ethical, often more so than the ones who are carrying the spiritual titles. So yeah, we've got an example here. Core issue: child protection, misuse of authority, ethical failure. I hope it speaks for itself. And if I have gotten too defensive in my posture, I hope it's standing as a rejection of the control game that keeps it abusive. So I'm simply being today. I'm just being honest. Bzz, put me on the machine, the polygraph. Look at my eyes. What's going on there? Micro expressions. So I'm not hiding. I am doing what I believe matters. Without trying to just constantly justify to those who refuse to act when they could have. So if the community wants to know more, ask me more. If somebody's actually listened to all of this and gone, yeah, I've got a couple of questions, Matt. Yeah, ask away. I'm going to still try plugging through things and planting seeds of truth. This is in the various music pieces, starting from the very beginning. The very first song, all about AI tools. It's a two-edged sword, isn't it? And I hope that together our peace grows. If you're listening to this, I want your peace to grow. I don't subtract myself. I want my own peace to grow too. I want the experience to be respectful, ethical. When I expose myself with the view that it would be public. And so when it's public, even on YouTube, even if somebody tunes in and goes, I absolutely hate your broadcast, Matt, you monologued, you bored me to tears, or I sat there cringing through this thing. I'm just hoping at the city gates that spiritually it gets out and does its job. That's my faith. I don't think labels define character. I think actions do. So the term apostate, yes, we clearly see it's weaponized to instill people with fear, shut down inquiry, put up firewalls. But what I've actually encountered by people who bear that label, or who have embraced the label, I find respectful, thoughtful, ethical people, not what I've been told, nor the type of person I've experienced in chairing judicial or elders committees. No. I found decency, restraint, and respect towards different beliefs. Even people who have been so hurt by an organization, Watchtower, Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm still a Jehovah's Witness, folks, and I've been treated respectfully. I'm not unaware of the dangers. I realize that you can have somebody look at my face and go, well, now, Matt, you're the target. And so I may be targeted from all sorts of corners now. But I want to talk about these people who have acted in decency with restraint, wanting to help. That has taken moral courage. That is more than this rebellious thing we're told they are. So why do these things matter? Reality breaks through the propaganda. So yes, I've been taught to expect that spiritual poison is over here and enemies are over there, like this and like that. I've been out in the ministry, for goodness sake, knocking on every door. What I found with this terrible label that's been put on people is fellow humans, and I'm going to say fellow human beings because I'm being told I cannot use the word being because there's only one being, and that being is Jehovah. But I'm going to say beings because I can show you in the literature where we've used beings to include human beings. I found fellow human beings trying to process pain and speak truth and enable others to do so. Yes, they've sat there and cringed even at others from their community, but they got through. And maybe there's been a bit of humor to get through. I suppose you need to do that in this case as well. That's fine. But I've seen it with my own eyes. I've felt it in my gut. Oh, yes. There wasn't evil in the room. Well, yeah, there was, but the evil was inflicted from the external forces. I found people navigating trauma with integrity. Man, we need this. South Africa came through that with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. That was what that was supposed to do. So it's reframed what I've thought was the worst thing I could possibly do. The supposed ultimate betrayal. Matt, you are a betrayer. It's turned out to be speaking out in good conscience and meeting others who had done the same, often at great cost to themselves. And I can now talk for an hour, 30 minutes, without breaking off. Can actually move my jaw and actually feel like a lot of the psychological restraints have lifted. That's a catharsis. Not a surprise, right? The psychologists are going to go, yes. I haven't joined anything. It's a quiet revolution. Quiet revelation. I've seen for myself, I now feel free to think more and feel authentically, with permission, to myself, without needing to defend or explain it to those who haven't walked the same road. And even if some of those individuals who've been filming and, for broader purposes recording, still stands. I haven't been used, slandered, betrayed. I have, but not by these people. So there's this reversal. And I'm not saying that everybody's all in great psychological condition, no. But it is not the face of evil that we are told. It's not what evil looks like. It's actually what compassion under pressure looks like. So if persons have transmitted my so-called apostate activism by my standing at the so-called biblical city gate for analysis and critical examination, if other JWs, I want to say weeds, want to remove me on grounds of apostasy, despite my constant appeal and saying, well, look, I will do commiserate works, I always have. And I've shared intimate things. My intimate dreams that I even felt guilty about. You know, I mean, that's the extent I went to go, no, I'm going to function. If I'm going to hold people's lives in my hands as a king and priest, I am going to function as honestly and as transparently as I can. All my thoughts, emotions on the table. So if they want to remove me on grounds of apostasy after a massive failure to warn the planetary congregation, after at least 3 years of warnings, don't I have some freedom to come out of exile, to actually heal? And I hope this bleeding thing and other things ease up. I hope I can come out of this exile. I believe that there is a moral and spiritual and personal freedom to come out of exile. And here's the irony. I don't believe I ever left integrity. I believe I stood by it while others abandoned it. So I want to break it down clearly. The city gate thing, I must be repeating. It's a biblical model. In ancient times, the city gates were the forum for justice, warnings, public testimony. Think of Ruth chapter 4 verses 1. Think of Proverbs 31 verses 23. My live stream and public appeal were in essence a modern city gate. Open, visible, done in the absence of proper internal pressures and process, coercion. Was I hiding? No. No. Have I been seeking redress publicly after private and scriptural routes have failed? Yes. So biblically I fail. I may have... Can I start again? Biblically, I feel I have followed Matthew 18. I feel I have followed biblically Ezekiel 33, where I have warned. I gave chances to respond. When they didn't, I cried out not for revenge, but for accountability, for the distress in my soul. And so if I'm removed as an apostate, I think that is going to be a betrayal and punishment of truthful testimony, not neglect. It's their neglect. I wasn't promoting falsehood. I still don't. I'm not promoting a rejection of Christ. I'm not inciting a rebellion. I am begging for justice. So a removal, it's not based on biblical apostasy. It's on institutional self-protection. And my exile, be it from bad health or having to keep safe. The vandalism, oh my goodness, I didn't even tell you about the vandalism going on. I'd park my car in a Kingdom Hall for a pioneer meeting and it would be trashed. And I'd make a report to the circuit overseer, he wouldn't care. And I knew that was the procedure. Yeah. Go to the police, yeah, insurance, yeah, I don't know. And the simpler route was just go and fix the car yourself. Whilst the money that is there for local needs is going off to worldwide work. And I mean money that's in a letter saying, please address the needs, local needs. I never saw it. And I knew there were people that were really hard up, but here's something. The Premier, Cape Premier, very interested in pioneers. Had good talk with him. He wanted to know from his office, connected to the office, what's happening with pioneers. I want to know. And it was interesting because when I was with the Premier, there was a fire. And I got up instinctively to put the fire out, but he was already putting the fire out. And it was quite a display. And I looked at him and I thought, oh, there he is. He's taking action. And I liked that. So my exile was imposed. It wasn't actually chosen. Stonewalled, isolated, left without clear standing, asked repeatedly, am I removed? I don't know. They're not answering. So the silence is a social exile. And yet they're corresponding, or others are corresponding with me, and I'm going, this is just, I don't know. You're holding on to me, you're using me, I don't know, where am I? So did I ever exile myself? I remained in the light. Oh, and by the way, I still pioneer. I'm going to put in a report just now. Others may go, Matt, you are, again, a lunatic. Just turn your back on this thing and forget it. But then what about, I'm caught between this thing of going, well, what about persons who genuinely want to have freedom to be in that system because actually they found a way for it to work? So yeah, my trying to reclaim spiritual identity is a work in progress, sure. Who has the right on my own conscience or my own connection to the divine or the supreme? So coming out of exile, it doesn't require approval. I have paid a price for loyalty to truth for years. And the fact that I'm talking, I am proving to myself, though, yeah, I can feel the strain. And I'm sure you feel the strain if you've come this far. I'm reclaiming my voice. I'm reclaiming community or tribe, whatever form is healthiest. And I know that there's vulnerability out of emergence. I know that. I know that there's people that prey on the awakening. But I feel that there is a peace of mind. I actually think I started sleeping last night a little bit better. So some call me apostate. That's no different to throughout the years. My own instructor was seeding that 10 years ago. Going, oh, Matt's like this. Going, yeah, but you kind of renegade yourself, pal. Was Jeremiah called an apostate? Yeah. How about the Apostle Paul? So was Christ. So I've stood for truth when it was costly, and I'm no longer in exile. I walk free in conscience, light and love. So I think I've shared enough of my story, my motives and my pain and my conscience and my clarity for me to help you, help me, help you, to try and craft something meaningful, spiritually grounded in a video presentation, coming out of exile at the city gates, saying to people, Shalom, peace to those listening. Achalan wa sachalan. You know who I am. I've carried this message for a long time, not out of bitterness, but out of a deep responsibility to speak honestly and protect what is good and sacred. And I am emphasizing it in these loops, and I hope that in future I'm not going to have to do it like that, and it's going to be more structured and not as painful to kind of listen to. I never imagined myself speaking at what you might call the city gates, publicly and in distress and vulnerable like this. But sometimes when all internal paths fail, the truth has still got to be told. Matt, we heard you. Yeah, well, let me repeat. I've tried to ask questions inside the religious community that I've loved and I've served and I still do, raising concerns about teachings that seem to promote literal corporal punishment. Despite laws in our country that protect children from harm, I was not trying to rebel. I wasn't angry. Have I suffered, shouted, screamed? Yeah, I have. But even that, I believe I did in a controlled way. I would get out and go somewhere else. Why? Because this just isn't right somewhere. I've asked the question, is this really what's right? Is this really what Christ would approve? And I can speak in sacred address, and the answers that come back as Spirit brings things back to my mind are profound. So meeting questions with silence, closed doors, no open meetings, no transparency, no answers. When I've posed sincere questions and said, what's the right way to do that? How can I rephrase it? And then eventually involving police and asking very plainly in the presence of witnesses. So in deep distress, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, I've turned it into this live stream that's out there. I think it was 3 a.m. I had no script. I just had the truth, and I spoke. I spoke my heart out. And so this teaching, it puts the community at risk. I endeavored to make that clear. If one child is harmed because of silence, I can't live with myself. So the live stream was shared by people I had once been taught to fear. People labeled as apostates. When I met them, I saw something very different. Not devils, not slanderers, I saw people that were flawed, yes, like me. I'm flawed, riddled. But I found people who are respectful, thoughtful, ethical, holding center. And many of them have also stood at the city gates and they've been silenced. And so here's the turning point. Here's my message now. I didn't run from the truth. I ran toward it. Here we go! I've never rejected the values of Christ. Those principles. I've sought to uphold them when others just wouldn't. So if now some wish to call me an apostate for protecting the vulnerable, hey. If they remove me for sounding the trumpet when others slept, I'm going to have a little nap now. Let them. I no longer carry that burden. In some ways it's there, sure. But the main burden, I don't carry it. So those who are still inside, still hurting, still confused, I've got a message for you. You don't need to be afraid of truth. It'll never hurt you like silence can. If your conscience is burdened, please know you're not alone, you're not crazy, and you're not faithless. You are human. You are a human being, and you are worthy, and you're not in exile, not from God, not from love, and not from truth. So thank you very, very much for listening.